Time seemed to slow to a crawl as countless eyes followed Duan Wuzong's body through the air. Even Wang Chong, who was commanding everything from the summit, couldn't help but widen his eyes. Zhao Wujiang. A hint of surprise appeared in Wang Chong's eyes. Duan Wuzong was no weakling. A person who could lead the Whitestone Corps to become one of the strongest corps in the Mengshi Zhao army, and who defeated the Anan Protectorate army in the Battle of Arai, could never be a weakling. In truth, in the history that Wang Chong knew, Duan Wuzong was a valiant Mengshi Zhao general whose reputation had risen as high as the noon sun, in fact surpassing Zhao Wujiang. Wang Chong had originally believed that it was already enough for Zhao Wujiang to hold down Duan Wuzong and prevent him from being effective. He hadn't expected Zhao Wujiang to not only block Duan Wuzong but to also send him flying. In terms of strength, he had completely suppressed Duan Wuzong. Boom! Duan Wuzong flew through the air like he had been fired from a cannon and crashed into the ground. The ground where Duan Wuzong landed was instantly covered with cracks, and dust from the impact instantly filled the air. General! General! All the Whitestone Corps soldiers in the surroundings paled in shock and began to rush over. Duan Wuzong was the linchpin of the Whitestone Corps. The loss of Duan Wuzong would be like the end of the world for the Whitestone Corps. The Whitestone Corps has lost. As Wang Chong looked down from above, an icy light shone in his eyes. It wasn't that a general couldn't fight at the head of one's troops and lead an army in a charge against the enemy formation, but the risks were too great. If one wanted to be a general who could serve as a model for their soldiers, one first had to be inconceivably powerful. If one did not have the sufficient strength and then suffered a mishap like Duan Wuzong, the morale of the army would instantly crumble. A general leading the charge could easily raise the morale of the army, but they could also cause the morale of the army to plummet by encountering some sort of mishap. Perhaps Duan Wuzong himself did not realize that the Whitestone Corps' morale would crumble. This is what it means to be raised by Shao He and cast down by Shao He One. Wang Chong quietly said to himself, his hands held behind his back as he watched the dust rising from that place down below. Morale had never been some immaterial object. An ordinary soldier might be willing to throw caution to the wind and fight alongside their general, or they might think only of fleeing. If one considered these situations in terms of morale, the morale of the former was at 100% while the morale of the latter was at 0. On the battlefield, morale was always one of the core factors behind the victory or defeat of an army. Protect general. The rest of you lead the army in retreat. I'll delay them. Brothers, General regarded us as his brothers. No matter what, we can't let anything happen to General. Soldiers are trained for 1,000 days to be used in a single moment. General has treated us all well, so now it is time to repay General. Rumble. Before Zhao Wujiang could pursue, the soldiers of the Whitestone Corps charged forward and heedlessly threw themselves at Zhao Wujiang. Any army, no matter how decadent or corrupt, would always have loyal subordinates like these. And Duan Wuzong, as the commander of the Whitestone Corps, had countless elite soldiers under him, so he certainly wasn't lacking in such subordinates. Bang bang bang. Zhao Wujiang's massive halo of thorns vibrated, the roiling stellar energy sending the Whitestone Corps soldiers flying. Before they even hit the ground, they were already corpses. Even so, fearless experts continued to charge forward and block Zhao Wujiang's path. Kill. Finish off Duan Wuzong. Don't let Duan Wuzong run. Kill these traitorous dogs and open the way for General Zhao. Brothers, forward. The time for revenge is here. Don't let Duan Wuzong escape. Duan Wuzong had no shortage of loyal guards, and Zhao Wujiang similarly had no shortage of elite and courageous experts. On the mountain slope, Zhao Wujiang's countless soldiers charged down to meet the attack of the Whitestone Corps elites. Both sides had no fear of death, and the grudges between Zhao Wujiang and Duan Wuzong, between the Anan Protectorate Army and the Whitestone Corps, were more than enough to incite both groups to fight to the death. Boom boom boom. Waves of energy swept in all directions as the area where the two groups of elites were fighting became a bloody meat grinder. On the other side, a group of corps officers of the Whitestone Corps paled at this sight and quickly carried Duan Wuzong down the mountain. Thump thump. Zhao Wujiang's stellar energy swept through the field, sending the elites of the Whitestone Corps flying like they were fallen leaves. But in the end, he was still forced to sigh. It's a pity. Duan Wuzong, you bastard. It seems like your life won't be ending here. Even though the Anan Protectorate army had no small number of experts, Zhao Wujiang had still been off by one last move. The Whitestone Corps' frenzied interception had succeeded in allowing Duan Wuzong to escape. Retreat. Quickly withdraw. With Duan Wuzong's defeat, the momentum of the Anan Protectorate army was at its highest while the Whitestone Corps was crumbling away in a complete rout. And unlike the first time, the Whitestone Corps had truly been utterly defeated. Humph, you want to leave? Do you think it's that easy? At the peak of the mountain, amidst the blustery winds, Wang Chong was overseeing the entire situation, well aware of everything that was going on. How could he let them retreat so easily? With a sweep of his palm, the entire battlefield shifted. The Tang soldiers began their swift pursuit, quickly catching up with the fleeing Whitestone Corps. When the enemy advances, I retreat. When the enemy retreats, I advance. When the enemy attacks, I defend. When the enemy defends, I attack. These were the simple principles that Wang Chong had used in these melee battles. But they had been enough to turn the smug and aspiring Whitestone Corps into a mere plaything in the palm of his hand. Kai Il! The countless warriors of the Anan Protectorate army howled down the mountain. The long training of the Tang army showed itself here, as even in their rapid charge, the Tang soldiers still maintained their formations. 10,000, 20,000, 30,000. Like a torn paper fan, more and more of the dispirited Whitestone Corps was caught up by the Anan Protectorate army, and the number of people unable to escape rose to 20,000, 30,000, and finally 40,000. As long as the Whitestone Corps did not dare to resist and put all their mind into fleeing, these people would all be killed and killed quickly. There was no faster way to die than exposing one's back to one's enemies. But if the Whitestone Corps turned around to resist, they would once more fall into Wang Chong's tempo of, when the enemy advances, I retreat. When the enemy retreats, I advance. When the enemy attacks, I defend. When the enemy defends, I attack. This was just another, slower way to die. And in the end, the number of casualties would be even greater. Congratulations to user for killing 30,000 Mengshi Zhao army soldiers. The familiar voice of the Stone of Destiny rang out in his ear. And as Wang Chong looked down the mountain, a harsh light flashed through his eyes. Forward is death and retreat is death. Let me see what you will choose. This thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind as he stood on the summit, a stern look on his face. It seemed as if he belonged to a completely different world. Now, the right to choose belonged to the Mengshi Yusang army. At the base of the mountain, Daluan Ruozhen suddenly ordered in Tibetan, Jiasiluo, it's your turn. This. Jiasiluo hesitated for a moment, subconsciously turning to look at Great General Huashu Huaitsong. Although the Great Minister Daluan Ruozhen was nominally the highest-ranked leader of the Ngari royal lineage for military affairs, it was actually Great General Huashu Huaitsong who gave the orders. Moreover, although everyone knew that the Great Minister was extremely intelligent, that was only in terms of schemes and plans. In terms of actual application of the art of war, the Great Minister was not that formidable. Didn't you hear the Great Minister's words? Go! Huashu Huaitsong said lightly, his face expressionless as he waved his hand. Yes, your subordinates leaves now. His mind settled. Jiasiluo hurriedly bowed and turned to leave. Wait a moment. Break in through the northeast. Huashu Huaitsong suddenly yelled at Jiasiluo. Yes, my lord. His mind further energized. Jiasiluo left even faster. Once Jiasiluo left, Huashu Huaitsong suddenly turned to Daluan Ruozhen. Great Minister is worried about Mengshi Zhao? He was still speaking in Tibetan so that bystanders couldn't hear. Only he knew that Daluan Ruozhen's words back there hadn't been an order, only an expression of his stance. A stance on how the Tibetans should act. Yes. Daluan Ruozhen nodded, a hint of worry in his eyes. This brat is more formidable than we imagined. If Mengshi Zhao loses too badly, suffers too many casualties, it won't be of benefit to us. Morale is a very tricky thing. Moreover, even though Zheluofeng hasn't said anything, if we truly do nothing, they'll hold a grudge against us. This certainly won't be good for our alliance. After all, we still need their assistance in many other areas. This being the case, let us move then, Huashu Huizong indifferently replied, few emotions evident on his face. Huashu, you entered the army much earlier than I did. I heard that before you were made a general, you served under the command of the White Lion Great General. Besides Xianxia Zhenxiong, you should have interacted with some of the other commanders of the Central Plains. Have you ever encountered such strange fighting methods? Wang Chong's tactics were far too bizarre. A constant repetition that was as vexing as maggots gnawing on one's bones. If they retreated, he would attack, and if they attacked, he would retreat. Everyone could see his moves clearly, and even the Whitestone Corps knew what to do, yet they had still fallen prey to this tactic. The most frightening thing of all was that Duan Wuzong's Whitestone Corps couldn't retreat now, even if it wanted to. If the Tibetans did not intervene, the entire Whitestone Corps might not just lose 40 or 50,000, but be completely wiped out. Not many people had noticed this, including Zhel Yuofeng. I have not. A ripple of emotion finally appeared on Huashu Huizong's placid face, after which came a long silence. As someone who had contended against the tiger of the empire Xianxia Zhenxiong for several decades, Huashu Huizong had long ago become a figure of the Southwest whose every move could cause 3 countries to tremble. Meanwhile, Daluan Ruozhen was a person whose reserves of knowledge were as deep as the sea, an existence that many people, including Xianxia Zhenxiong, had to be wary of. But both of them had to admit that the youth on the summit had already surpassed the bounds of their knowledge. Damn it! At the base of the mountain, on the northeast side, the ranks of the soldiers were restless. As Jiasiluo led a group of Tibetan cavalry toward the mountain, he looked up at the scale-like metal walls covering the slopes and felt like his head was aching. This brat is completely targeting our Yusang. Duan Wuzong and his Mengshizhao infantry probably had not felt much, but as a cavalry commander, Jiasiluo could tell at a glance that these defenses covering the summit had been targeted at the Tibetans. Just where did this kid come from? If this time counted as well, then this was Jiasiluo's 3rd time fighting against Wang Chong. The first time had been during his pursuit of Wang Yan's portion of the Annan Protectorate Army, and the second time had been when they had been about to join up with Great General Huashu Huizong's army on the plains. It wasn't that the Great Tang had never produced any formidable opponents. For instance, Geshu Han on the Longxi border had always been an opponent that Yusang had been most wary of. But to speak frankly, after suffering 2 consecutive defeats and now confronting the dense rows of metal walls covering the mountain, Jiasiluo truly had the impulse to turn around and run. Only the great general's order compelled him to stay. This mountain was no less than hell on earth for cavalry. Jiasiluo even suspected that the great general and the great minister had had good reason to use the Mengshizhao army as a vanguard. This damn brat. If I get my hands on him, I'll tear his body into pieces. Jiasiluo suddenly raised his head and stared at the small and slim figure standing on the summit. Though that figure was not at all stalwart or lofty, it contained a power that could inspire dread and terror. Even if other people might have been deceived, Jiasiluo knew that the true commander of this battle, including the battle with Duan Wuzong, was not some other general of the Great Tang, not Wang Yan, not Xianyu Zhongtong, not Zhao Wujiang. From start to finish, it had always been that unfathomable youth on the summit who had seemingly appeared out of thin air. Great General's judgment was correct. Of the 4 major regions of the mountain, the northeast corner is the easiest to break through, Jiasiluo said to himself as he looked up at the mountain. The entire slope was covered in the soldiers of the Whitestone Corps, who seemed almost magnetically attracted to the soldiers of the Annan Protectorate Army. At present, the northeast corner was where the defenses were weakest and where the Tibetans could most easily open a path. Of course, there was actually an even better path up the mountain. But Jiasiluo glanced at that nearby 10-samjiang-wide path. As his eyes passed over those hundreds of thousands, perhaps even 1 million, caltrops of all sizes, his heart shivered. This was a path of death for cavalry. No cavalry could charge through that path covered in caltrops that ranged from the size of millstones to that of dates. Even clearing up all of them would require several months. And one also had to account for the fact that Wang Chong had arranged for ballistae and master archers to guard the path, their arrowheads all targeted at the base of the mountain. Anyone who stepped on this path would only be delivering themselves to the feet of the god of death. Kaklak. Veins bulged up from his forehead, but Giaciluo quickly managed to cool his temper. Soldiers, hear my order. Be ready to follow me. Giaciluo suddenly waved the halberd in his hand. Immediately after, his horse neighed as he began to charge to the summit, his black and red cape fluttering behind him. Hiya! Thousands of Tibetan soldiers followed him like carp swimming up a river. All of these cavalry were skilled with both the bow and the horse, and they charged through the metal walls as if no one was there to stop them. Brat, if you think these metal pimples can stop us, then you're gravely mistaken. Nothing in this world can completely block us Tibetans. Giaciluo clenched his teeth as he pressed his muscular body against the body of his highland steed. His heart enraged. The cavalry of the plains learned how to ride from the time that they were children. The metal walls that Wang Chong had set up on the mountain truly were very large barriers, but it was impossible for them to completely stop the Tibetan charge. Everyone, follow me. Let us slaughter them until they're forced to cast off everything in their attempts to flee. Giaciluo raised his halberd high and bellowed. Roar! The Tibetan soldiers behind him roared in response. If one looked down from the sky, one would see a black dragon weaving through the openings in the metal walls, twisting and turning as if swimming through a river. If a straight charge was impossible, then the cavalry would take an indirect route. This was the method Giaciluo had thought of to break through Wang Chong's metal walls. Humph! He's taken the bait. On the summit, Wang Chong immediately noticed Giaciluo's army weaving through the walls to the northeast, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. It really was from the northeast corner. Huashu Huaitsong, you really have read quite a few of the military texts of the Central Plains. Wang Chong inwardly sneered. There had been a rumor for some time that Huashu Huaitsong had obtained no small number of military texts from Daluan Ruozhen. From them, he had developed a deep understanding of the style of the generals of the Central Plains and was able to easily defeat them. But because Huashu Huaitsong commanded forces consisting of pure cavalry, not the primarily infantry forces of the Central Plains, no one had ever been able to completely verify this rumor. But with this casual test, Wang Chong had immediately confirmed that there wasn't simply a possibility that Huashu Huaitsong had read the military texts of the Central Plains, but an absolute fact. The rumor could not be false. To use the military texts of the Central Plains to deal with the commanders of the Central Plains, Huashu Huaitsong, I really have to hand it to you for thinking of the idea. Giaciluo, since you're here, don't think about leaving. I've prepared a large gift for you. If Giaciluo were to see Wang Chong's expression at this moment, his heart would tremble in fear. General Luo, this general is here. Responding to Wang Chong's voice, a black armored general wearing a black cape, whose dark face wore a dignified and stern expression, walked out from behind Wang Chong. What order does young master have? This general will carry it out at any time. The general's pitch-black skin seemed forged from metal, and his every movement was imbued with a powerful will that set him apart from other generals. Luo Ji, nicknamed Iron Spear Luo, was a high-ranking general of the Annan Protectorate Army, his rank no less than Zhao Wujiang's. However, while Zhao Wujiang was close to Shen Yuzhongtong, Luo Ji had never mixed well with Shen Yuzhongtong, even though they had both served under Zhangzhou Jianxiong. It wasn't merely because Luo Ji was loyal to Zhangzhou Jianxiong. More important was the fact that Luo Ji had always believed that Zhangzhou Jianxiong was the only person capable of holding the position of Annan Protector General. Although Shen Yuzhongtong was Zhangzhou Jianxiong's appointed successor, his abilities were not enough for him to inherit the position. The southwest was linked to Mengshi Zhao and Yusang, at the intersection of three empires. The situation here was no less complicated than the situations in the western regions or Anong. Problems were bound to crop up if a suitably powerful person was not standing guard. Luo Ji had been proved completely correct by how things had developed. When the army broke out of Lion City, Luo Ji had immediately chosen to break with Shen Yuzhongtong and lead a part of the army to follow Wang Yan. In Luo Ji's view, the Wang clan father and son had far greater insight than Shen Yuzhongtong. At the very least, they always seemed to know what to do in this war and not lead the army into danger like Shen Yuzhongtong. He truly is a fierce general. Wang Chong's eyes were very sharp, and when he saw Luo Ji step forth, he mentally gave a nod of approval. The reason he had chosen Luo Ji was very simple. Luo Ji was extremely skilled in using the spear and was incredibly tough on the offense. Last time, on the summit, Wang Chong had realized that while Jiasiluo showed no fear of the rest of the officers that Wang Yan had brought with him from the Anan Protectorate Army, he had been extremely wary of Luo Ji. In the battle, he had done all he could to avoid Luo Ji. In fact, not long after Luo Ji arrived on the scene, he had quickly retreated. At the time, Wang Chong's sharp senses had noticed that while Jiasiluo's sword-fanged beast transformation possessed incredible defensive capabilities, Luo Ji's terrifying spear arts just so happened to counter the sword-fanged beast. This was one of the primary reasons Jiasiluo avoided him. But, Jiasiluo, it won't be so easy for you to leave this time. A cold smile hovered on Wang Chong's lips. Zhonglong, Zhao Hu, Chun Qiong, Li Ji, Fang Tang, Zhou Han. Your subordinate is here. Su Shiping, Su Anduan. Your subordinate is here. Accompany General Luo. You should know what to do, correct? Your subordinate understands. With a wave of Wang Chong's sleeve, 6 of Li Sai's Black Dragon Bandit elites set off together with Su Shiping and Su Anduan. Luo Ji's strength was enough to present a massive threat to Jiasiluo, but this threat was far from fatal. The 6 Black Dragon Bandit elites and the 2 high-ranking commandants were the assistants that Wang Chong had provided for Luo Ji. General Luo, wait a moment. As Luo Ji was preparing to head down, Wang Chong suddenly thought of something. He took the multi-segment spear from his bosom and threw it over. If you want to deal with Jiasiluo, you'll need this. Take it. Even someone as composed as Luo Ji was slightly moved at the sight of this folded-up and retracted spear. At this time, Wang Chong would not be giving him any normal spear. Luo Ji could only think of one possibility. It had to be a wood steel weapon. Thank you, young master. Luo Ji turned around. His heart moved, but his face remained calm and composed. Go! Wang Chong laughed and said no more. This segmented spear was based on Martianus Yi's weapon. The materials making up the spear shaft weren't that high level. It was simply high-class refined iron mixed with meteoric metal powder, further buffed with a large number of toughening inscriptions. The crucial part was the spearhead. Wood steel was truly too rare, so Wang Chong had decided to save on materials and made only this single wood steel spearhead. Rumble. Warhorses rumbled off as Luo Ji mounted his black horse and led his troops charging down the mountain. Regardless of what Wang Chong was thinking, this gift of the wood steel spear was like giving a tiger wings. The vastness of the mountain made it so that very few people noticed Luo Ji moving out. Warhorses neighed as Jiasiluo led thousands of Tibetan cavalry charging up the mountain slope. This immediately had an effect on the 2 sides fighting on the mountain. Niai! A warhorse flew forward as one with its rider, and a heavy hoof smashed against the shield of a Tang soldier. With a scream, the soldier was sent flying into the air by the massive impact. Bang 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 bang. One Tibetan cavalryman after another charged up the slope, and with each one, another great Tang soldier would be sent flying. Cavalry was the most powerful fighting force on the continent, so the power the Tibetan cavalry were able to display far surpassed that of the Whitestone Corps. Even though their speed was inhibited by the terrain and the metal walls, the Tibetan cavalry were still able to display more power than the Mengshi Zhao soldiers. Anyone who stops me dies. There was a heaven-shaking roar as the sword-fanged beast of the 5 tiger generals, Jiasiluo, charged into battle. Boom! A massive explosion with Jiasiluo at the center rippled through the battlefield. Aya! All the soldiers of the Anan Protectorate Army in the area were thrown aside together with mud, rock and gravel, and even a few Whitestone Corps soldiers who were too slow to dodge. Clang! Even a few of those massive metal walls were pulled out of the earth by this explosion, crashing back down onto the Anan Protectorate Army. Die for me! Jiasiluo's helmet suddenly exploded, his hair wildly flying in the air. He leaped off his horse, vanishing into the ranks of the Anan Protectorate Army. Boom! A massive halo of thorns began to expand through the crowd. Aya! Shrill screams filled the air as the Tang soldiers were thrown around like ragdolls. These Tang elites who had experienced so many battles were insignificant ants before a top-class general like Giaciluo. Boom boom boom. Giaciluo jumped left and right, no one able to stop him. A great Tang officer charged forward in an attempt to stop him, but he was still 3 zhang away when Giaciluo's plentiful stellar energy sent him flying with a jolt. His chest was caving in while in midair, and he was already breathing his last. Ha ha ha! Foul brat! All shitty tactics are nothing before absolute strength. Your death is certain today. Giaciluo seemed to be insane as he roared in Tibetan. He was treating the Anan Protectorate army before him as a manifestation of Wang Chong, each individual as a Wang Chong through which he could vent his rage. Bang bang bang. Giaciluo was like a dragon in human form, slaughtering wherever he went and invigorating the Tibetan soldiers. The armored cavalry rushed behind him, inflicting heavy casualties on the Anan Protectorate army. Ha ha ha! This is all the Tang are. Last time they needed to rely on the rainstorm and the night. These bastards don't even dare to face us head-on. You're completely right, ha ha ha. Kill them all. All the Tibetans immediately regained their energy, especially those who had experienced those 2 consecutive defeats with Giaciluo. Before the battle, each of them had a thick shadow hanging over their hearts. But now, this shadow was no more. Kai-il! The arrival of the Tibetans had completely altered the course of this battle, and altered the balance of power between the Whitestone Corps and the Anan Protectorate army. In the northeast corner, wherever the Tibetans struck, the Tang lines would fall into utter chaos. And once they sensed the changes brought about by the Tibetans, the Mengshi Zhao troops in the other areas also rallied. Everyone, don't be afraid. The Tibetans have moved out. Hold! The Anan Protectorate army isn't invincible. The Tibetans are their bane. Everyone, work hard. The Great Tang is about to lose. They can't be any match for us. All the Whitestone Corps soldiers had originally been fearful and only thinking about fleeing. Suddenly, however, their morale was revived, and one by one, they began to turn and fight back against the Anan Protectorate army. And despite the fighting power of the Anan Protectorate army, it couldn't do anything against them for a few moments. The situation had rapidly reversed, Mengshi and Yusang working together to put the Great Tang at an extreme disadvantage. Yet, on the other side, Zhao Wujiang gave a faint smile. It really is as young master said. Yusang wasn't able to restrain itself, Zhao Wujiang said as he listened to the fighting. Besides holding down Duan Wuzong, he had also received another order. Everything was going as Wang Chong had predicted. Even the Tibetans had mobilized their forces at the exact time. Giaciluo, you won't be able to go back this time. Sheathing his blood-red saber, Zhao Wujiang smiled as he pulled on the reins of his horse and rode off toward the northeast corner, not caring about the battle before him. Giaciluo, I've come to fight you. This mighty shout was like the ringing of a gong, reverberating through the heavens. Even someone several li away could hear it. Humph! Not knowing your own strength. A derisive snort, equally loud, came from the northeast. At almost the same time, Giaciluo was leading his army like a tiger leaping in Zhao Wujiang's direction. Although Huashu Huizong had ordered him to break through the northeast corner, that was purely because the Whitestone Corps had the smallest number of soldiers there, making it most convenient for the Tibetan cavalry to charge onto the mountain. But in Giaciluo's heart, the main objective was to defeat the general who had defeated Duan Wuzong, Zhao Wujiang. What's the point in defeating someone weaker than you? Only by defeating someone stronger than you can you prove your worth. This had always been the sword-fanged beast Giaciluo's long-held conviction, the principle that he abided by. Bang! Zhao Wujiang's horse ran 70-some zhang, but the mountain was too packed with people for him to travel too quickly. He suddenly jumped off his horse, landing on a metal wall 10-some zhang away. With another jump, he appeared on yet another wall 10-some zhang away. A majestic halo of thorns constantly glimmered, making the armored Zhao Wujiang appear like a god, visible even from several li away. That dazzling light immediately attracted the attention of everyone on the mountain, and even Huashu Huizong and Daluan Ruozhen couldn't help but look over. As a high-ranking general of the Annan Protectorate Army, Zhao Wujiang had quite the prestigious reputation in the southwest, and almost no one could not recognize him. Even Zheluo Feng and his son Fenjie had heard of this person's thunderous deeds. It's Zhao Wujiang. Crown Prince Fenjie's eyes widened. Zhao Wujiang was a very special existence in Meng Shizhao. After all, he had once served as a good-natured emissary from the Great Tang to Meng Shizhao, and he was intimately related to the establishment of the Whitestone Corps. Before Meng Shizhao had fought with the Great Tang, Zhao Wujiang had been very famous within the 6 Zhao of Irai. The people of Meng Shizhao had a very complicated attitude toward Zhao Wujiang. Thus, even though Zhao Wujiang had defeated Duan Wuzong, none of them felt much hostility. It was just that the Southwestern War was too important for Meng Shizhao to allow a defeat. Royal Father, I'll go up with some troops. Fenjie's brows rose as he immediately had the impulse to move out. Zheluo Feng seemed willing, but when he glanced at Daluan Ruozhen and Huashu Huizong, he immediately restrained himself. Wait a moment. It's still not time for us to act. If we intervene now, we might displease Huashu Huizong. In addition, as allies, it should be time for them to make a contribution. The first part had been spoken in the language of Meng Shizhao, but for the latter part, he had softened his voice and switched to a dialect that very few people within the 6 Zhao could understand. Fenjie looked blankly at him before switching to that Irai dialect and asking, "But Royal Father, Jiasiluo has already moved, so the Great Tang might dispatch another general. Previously, didn't they dispatch Zhao Wujiang when we sent out Duan Wuzong? Humph, we don't need to trouble ourselves over that. Jiasiluo is at a level where he'll be able to retreat unharmed as long as Wang Yan and Shenyu Zhongtong don't act. Right now, both Wang Yan and Shenyu Zhongtong are still on the summit. Haven't you noticed that both Huashu Huizong and Daluan Ruozhen seem unconcerned?" Astonished, Fenjie shot a glance in their direction. Sure enough, neither Huashu Huizong nor Daluan Ruozhen seemed ready to move, and both had indifferent expressions on their faces. "Yes, Royal Father." Fenjie's muscles relaxed as he quickly returned to his position. Boom! Halfway up the mountain, a brilliant white flame blazed to life. Jiasiluo had finally triggered his transformation, his massive halo of thorns suddenly retracting into his body. In the next moment, Jiasiluo disappeared, replaced by a massive sword-fanged beast swiftly traveling atop the metal walls. Finally, boom! With an earth-shaking boom, Zhao Wujiang and Jiasiluo leaped up from metal walls 10 zhang from each other and collided, their stellar energies blazing. Under countless stares, they crashed against each other like 2 meteors, one red and one white. Rumble! As these 2 stellar energies of opposite nature clashed against each other, the pair exchanged nearly 100 strikes in that split second. Aya! While everyone was transfixed by the battle in the air, Zhao Wujiang suddenly screamed as one of Jiasiluo's paws struck his chest and sent him flying. Boom! Dust plumed into the air as Zhao Wujiang's descent sundered the earth. "General!" The surrounding Tang soldiers instantly paled in fright and yelled, "Ha ha ha, what Zhao Wujiang? He wasn't much at all." The sword-fanged beast Jiasiluo couldn't help but laugh after sending Zhao Wujiang flying. Zhao Wujiang was quite the famous figure in the southwest. Solely his relationship with Duan Wuzong and the Whitestone Corps was enough to classify him as a member of the Southwest's upper echelon. Being able to defeat an extremely well-known general of the Great Tang like Zhao Wujiang with a single palm was undoubtedly a great honor for Jiasiluo. "I just need to kill Zhao Wujiang and I'll have killed 12 famous Great Tang generals." Jiasiluo heartily laughed. Zhao Wujiang's war halo was clearly inferior to his sword-fanged beast halo. At the very least, his attacks were not strong enough to pierce through his transformation. As someone who had inherited a secret technique from the Great Snow Mountain Holy Temple, Jiasiluo possessed an almost impervious defense. Only the likes of Wang Yan or Shenyu Zhongtong, or perhaps the encirclement of many experts, would be able to break through it. "Zhao Wujiang, don't think about running." The sword-fanged beast put its 4 legs to use, its massive body suddenly leaping off the metal wall, headed straight for the place that Zhao Wujiang had landed. "Move out!" Zhao Wujiang had reacted faster than Jiasiluo. Before the sword-fanged beast had landed, A bloody light rushed out of the dust, charging up the mountain. Ha ha ha! You can't escape. Giaciluo howled with laughter, his eyes narrowing as they exuded an intense killing intent. Zhao Wujiang was still extremely far from the summit. Even if Wang Yan, Shen Yuzhongtong, or the other generals of the Great Tang were coming to assist, they would still need some time. Now is the best time to kill you. Giaciluo's killing intent was inflamed. A character like Zhao Wujiang was incredibly hard to kill in normal circumstances. He was currently injured and couldn't run very quickly, giving Giaciluo his best chance. Die for me! Giaciluo shook two of his paws, jolting away the surrounding Anan Protectorate army soldiers. Protect General! All around him was chaos as soldiers madly rushed at him. Out of my way! Giaciluo's stellar energy exploded. He was a prehistoric beast, his stellar energy so thick and condensed that it was almost corporeal, and his reverberating halo of thorns was as sharp as a saber. It was practically impossible to get within 3 zhang of him. Bang! His 4 paws dug into the ground and pushed as Giaciluo swiftly pursued Zhao Wujiang. Not good. Giaciluo has gotten too carried away. At the base of the mountain, Fenjie couldn't help but raise his eyebrows as he watched Giaciluo plunge alone into the ranks of the Anan Protectorate army. Don't chase a cornered enemy wasn't just a saying that applied to forest bandits. It was also appropriate for the battlefield. By chasing down Zhao Wujiang without even his personal guards, Giaciluo was breaking a major taboo. This fellow knows nothing at all about the art of war. He has to be brought back. Fenjie felt a deep concern. Fenjie didn't have much of a good impression of the other Tibetan generals, but he felt a deep connection with Giaciluo. The two had worked together to kill no small number of Tang generals. The two had perfectly complemented each other on the battlefield. Wait a moment. Zheluofeng called for Fenjie to stop, his expression solemn as he stared at the mountain. Look over there. Haven't you noticed anything? What? Fenjie's eyes focused, and a hint of surprise flickered across his face. You underestimate Giaciluo too much. If he was really this lacking in intelligence, do you think he would have reached his current position? And he's even ranked second of the 5 tiger generals. Look carefully at the great Tang soldiers around him. What do you see? Ah, Royal Father, you're saying. Fenjie's eyes narrowed as he finally realized. Those soldiers are all doing their utmost to protect Zhao Wujiang. If there is an ambush, they would never look like this. In these circumstances, there are only 2 possibilities. The first is that there is no ambush. It's only because he's seen this that Giaciluo would dare to chase after Zhao Wujiang. The second possibility is that there is an ambush, but only Zhao Wujiang knows about it, and the rest of the soldiers are clueless. Fenjie was dumbfounded. However, Giaciluo was only mobilized a few moments ago, while Zhao Wujiang was dispatched to deal with Duan Wuzong. If it is the second possibility, that would mean that when Zhao Wujiang emerged to deal with Duan Wuzong, he had already predicted that Giaciluo would appear and also prepared to intentionally get injured. But that seems a little too inconceivable, so I still lean toward the first possibility. Haven't you noticed that Daluan Ruozhen and Huashu Huizong are also hesitating? Zheluofeng said. Fenjie turned his head. Sure enough, Huashu Huizong's face was tinged with hesitation. It was clear that he was thinking the same thing as Zheluofeng. It really is the case. Fenjie's brow quickly relaxed. Zheluofeng was extremely perceptive, so he quickly noticed the change in Fenjie's attitude and gave him a mental nod of approval. Fenjie was the crown prince of Mengxizhao and also the son that he was most pleased by. He was an exceptional martial artist, had received a traditional Tang education in the capital of the Great Tang, had met the sage emperor, learned the art of war, and gained an understanding of how the Great Tang political system worked. At his age, there were far too few people who could match well with him. Crucially, his young age meant that he lacked experience, had not been sufficiently tempered. He could perceive many things, but it still wasn't enough. For example, he knew that it was inadvisable to charge alone into enemy ranks, but he hadn't noticed the reaction of the surrounding Tang soldiers. This shouldn't have been the case given Fenjie's abilities. It was just that his mind was unsettled and he lacked a little maturity and composure. These were the disadvantages brought about by his young age and lack of experience. This fellow Jiasiluo really might be able to kill Zhao Wujiang, Zheluo Feng muttered to himself as he looked up at the mountain. The martial arts of the Great Snow Mountain Holy Temple were completely different from those of the Central Plains, and even more different from those of Mengshi Zhao. Zhao Wujiang might have been able to defeat Duan Wuzong, but there was a real possibility that he could suffer a disastrous defeat against the even more formidable Jiasiluo. However, even if that's the case, we can't just ignore the possibility. Jai, ready yourself. After a little while, the situation might require you to go to Jiasiluo's aid. Yes, Royal Father. Fenjie immediately left to carry out this order. Hold on a second. Don't go too quickly. We don't want to act before the Tibetans do, Zheluo Feng said. The Tibetans had only moved to save the Mengshi Zhao soldiers. If Mengshi Zhao acted now, the Tibetans would inevitably feel rather embarrassed. If their help was of use, it would be fine, but if not, then the Tibetans would only feel displeased by their unnecessary actions. Your child understands. Fenjie nodded and left. On the other side, Daluan Ruozhen and Huashu Huaizong were carrying on a conversation in Tibetan. Fenjie has gone. These were the first words out of Daluan Ruozhen's mouth. I saw it. Huashu Huaizong nodded, his face emotionless. The two were focused on the mountain and had not even turned their heads to look in the direction of Zheluo Feng and Fenjie. But no action could be hidden from this pair. That crown prince of Mengshi Zhao seems to have quite the good impression of Jiasiluo, Daluan Ruozhen noted. That's normal. Jiasiluo is outwardly rough but inwardly kind. Fenjie's attitude is very typical, Huashu Huaizong indifferently said. If Fenjie had heard these words, he would definitely be stunned, as this pair was clearly discussing him. However, we should also make our preparations. With Jiasiluo moving, the Great Tang can't be doing nothing. Daluan Ruozhen waved his fan as he spoke. I understand. I've already made arrangements. With this said, both Daluan Ruozhen and Huashu Huaizong fell silent, neither saying a word. While Daluan Ruozhen, Huashu Huaizong, Zheluo Feng, and Fenjie were discussing what to do. On the summit, Jiasiluo's pursuit of Zhao Wujiang underwent a sudden transformation. Bang! Seemingly because Jiasiluo was coming too quickly, Zhao Wujiang staggered in a moment of carelessness and almost fell. This delay immediately created a fatal flaw. An excellent chance. Jiasiluo's eyes brightened at this sight as he immediately seized upon this chance. Rumble! Jiasiluo's dantian shook as it unleashed a thunderous clattering of metal that caused the ground beneath him to shake. Borrowing this repulsive force, Jiasiluo massively accelerated, instantly covering the distance between him and Zhao Wujiang as he descended with the weight of Mount Tai. Fierce beast stomp. Jiasiluo gathered up all the energy in his body and let out a primordial roar in midair. The claw of a giant beast manifested in the air, the size of a small mountain, and lunged at Zhao Wujiang. Ha ha ha! The 12th! Jiasiluo roared with laughter. One Zhao Wujiang at peak condition was already no match for him, let alone an injured one. Ha ha ha! You're right on time. In a flash, the panicked Zhao Wujiang's eyes suddenly shone with the dazzling light of the sun as Jiasiluo caught up to him. Jiasiluo, you've taken the bait. Boom! A bloody flame suddenly soared into the sky. As Jiasiluo looked on, the injured Zhao Wujiang suddenly pushed his palm under him and charged with all his strength at the lunging Jiasiluo. At the same time, Jiasiluo heard heavy booms at his ear. He could sense that several abnormally powerful figures had suddenly appeared amongst the Tang soldiers. They had been hidden there for some time, only launching their attack once he had chased Zhao Wujiang into the ambush zone. Jiasiluo, hand over your life. Boom! There was an earth-shaking explosion as an extremely sharp energy pierced into the sky, so sharp that it seemed like it could tear the sky to pieces. Iron Spear Luo. Jiasiluo felt his heart chill as this thought flashed through his mind. Only that invincible spear user of the Anan Protectorate Army, Luo Ji, could unleash such terrifying energy. I've been ambushed. As this thought flew through his mind, Zhao Wujiang, Luo Ji, Su Shiping, Su Anduin, and the 6 Black Dragon Bandit elites, Zhang Long, Zhao Hu, Chan Qiong, Li Ji, Fang Tang, and Zhou Han, converged on him from all sides. These 10 people had cut off all of Jiasiluo's retreats. Although Zhao Wujiang and Luo Ji were the strongest amongst the 10, the true killing move was embodied in Su Shiping, Su Anduin, and the 6 Black Dragon Bandit elites. If one looked down from the sky, one would be able to see that all 8 of their bodies were glimmering, their stellar energies fused into one whole, with the flickering image of a black scythe within. Death's Scythe. In that calamity, this had been one of the most powerful of the small-scale joint attack formations. There were many joint attack formations, especially in the army. Whether it was the Great Tang, Yusang, or Meng Shizhao, they all had these kinds of joint attack skills, some well-known and some secret. By combining the strength of many weaker individuals and the strength of the formation, they could challenge and even kill powerful experts. However, such formations had never been easy to cultivate. They required mutual understanding and cooperation, so as a result, only small-scale joint attack formations were currently in use. Joint attack formations only truly came into prevalence after the foreign invaders appeared. All the warriors of the continent, whether they were from the Great Tang of the Central Plains, Yusang, the Eastern and Western Turkic Khaganates, or the distant Abbasid Caliphate in Karak-Spazinu, had realized that none of their attacks were very effective against these otherworldly invaders. All their attacks were half as powerful when used against these invaders, so they all had to think about other methods. Thus, the small-scale joint attack formations suddenly became the focus of attention. All the empires and cultures of the world, including the Great Tang and the countries surrounding it, began to devote a large amount of manpower to researching and developing joint attack formations. A great number of joint attack formations were developed at this time. In a short period of time, the small-scale joint attack formations reached their peak power, and Death's Scythe was an outstanding example from this era. Although time had been short and Su Shiping, Su Anduin, and the 6 Black Dragon elites had still not trained extensively in Death's Scythe, the combined power of these 8 was more than enough to deal with Jiasiluo. Boom! Zhao Wujiang and Luo Ji worked together with the Death Scythe joint attack formation, and it took only a few seconds for the 10 people to enclose Jiasiluo. Even if Jiasiluo had been ready, it would have still been too late to escape. Ah! Vast waves of stellar energy surged as 11 people clashed in midair, and the surrounding soldiers looked on in shock. Jiasiluo screamed as his sword-fanged beast transformation was forcefully dispelled, the energy scattering from Jiasiluo's human form. Squelch! A dark red spear, shining with a bloody light, plunged through Jiasiluo's chest, narrowly missing his heart as it thrust through his organs and out the center of his back. Luo Ji. Invincible Iron Spear Luo Ji. Only one person in the Anan Protectorate army possessed such mighty spear arts that could completely disregard the defense of Jiasiluo's tough flesh and stellar energy. Iron Spear Luo. Wang Chong's with steel spear coupled with Luo Ji's terrifying spear arts had pierced straight through Jiasiluo's Shanzhong acupuncture point, tearing apart the organs in his chest. Even more terrifying was that Luo Ji's incredibly sharp stellar energy had already entered Jiasiluo's body through his spear, and was now wreaking havoc amongst his meridians. Jiasiluo! General! Roars came from all around as the eyes of the distant Tibetan warriors instantly turned red. Sudden. Too sudden. Jiasiluo had clearly been the pursuer, seemingly unstoppable and incomparably valiant, slaying all who dared to stand before him. Moreover, he had seemed ready to take Zhao Wujiang's life when the situation was reversed in the blink of an eye. Jiasiluo had turned from pursuer to pursued, to the ambushed. At the base of the mountain, the commanders of the Mengshi Yusang army felt their hearts stop. Ambush! This had been a through-and-through ambush. Zhao Wujiang's injury and escape had all been an act to lure Jiasiluo into range. Damn it! We've been fooled. Daluan Ruozen's pupils constricted as the fan in his hand stopped. His eyes turned up to that thin youth on the summit. Although Iron Spear Luo was famed for his spear arts, he was not known for his wit. Zhao Wujiang could never have anticipated that it would be Jiasiluo who would appear after these fierce exchanges. Daluan Ruozen could think of only one person who could predict, when Duan Wuzong was entering the field, that Jiasiluo would eventually show up. It was that young great Tang boy, Wang Chong. We've fallen for his scheme. Daluan Ruozen's sleeves fluttered as his right hand clenched his feather fan. For the first time, he felt like he had lost his poise. There were very few things in the world that could make him feel like he had lost his poise, but this incident was definitely one of them. Daluan Ruozen's loss of poise was certainly not because of Giaciluo. Giaciluo had merely induced it. The true reason was that Daluan Ruozen felt that he had encountered a true opponent. Giaciluo was someone that Huoshu Huizong had arranged to send out on the spot. When Duan Wuzong's Whitestone Corps was just beginning its assault, no normal person could have been thinking about trapping Giaciluo, and sent out Zhao Wujiang to deal with both. Daluan Ruozen didn't understand military affairs. But this incident now had nothing to do with military affairs. Daluan Ruozen felt like he had encountered an opponent who exactly matched him. Even if they weren't at his exact level, they were definitely a strategist on the same tier. We can't let this brat stick around. Daluan Ruozen's eyes narrowed as his killing intent blazed to life. He had originally felt that this boy's life should be preserved if possible so that he could obtain his military strategies. But now, Daluan Ruozen had changed his mind. This level of opponent had to be killed without the slightest delay. Kaklak. Sounds like that of popping beans came from next to Daluan Ruozen. Huoshu Huizong remained motionless, his stalwart figure looming like a mountain. But his tightly clenched hands and ashen complexion clearly divulged his emotional state. Although the offensive capabilities of Giaciluo's Swordfang Beast transformation were inferior to the abilities of Longqinba, it far surpassed Longqinba in terms of the toughness of its flesh, the strength of its defense, and its abilities to safeguard one's life. The Swordfang Beast transformation was a supreme defensive technique of the Great Snow Mountain Holy Temple. Giaciluo had chosen to pursue a completely different path from Longqinba, and it was precisely because of this that neither Daluan Ruozen nor Huoshu Huizong had been very worried when Giaciluo had gone off in pursuit of Zhao Wujiang. But Huoshu Huizong could have never predicted this sight taking place before his eyes. Tell Huoba Huiyuan to get ready to attack. Yes, milord. Putting aside the movements at the base of the mountain, everyone on the mountain was dumbstruck by Giaciluo's situation. Aya! A howl of terrible pain resounded through the sky. As Giaciluo and his assailants began to drop down from the sky, Giaciluo suddenly snatched Luoji's spear with his right hand, preventing Luoji from further pushing the spear into his chest. Bang! A steely palm fiercely shot toward Luoji. As everyone looked on, palms met, and Giaciluo borrowed the force of his collision with Luoji's palm to break free of the spear and streaked toward the ground, covered in bloody light. Get out of my way! Giaciluo roared, his arms opening wide as majestic stellar energy flooded out along with a canopy of blood. Aya! Screams filled the air as Tang soldiers were cast aside. Giaciluo, stimulated by the pain, was even faster than before, carving out a bloody path through the crowd as he charged down the mountain. Don't let him escape! In the rear, Luoji's spear hit the ground with a bang while a look of surprise flashed through his eyes. Giaciluo had still been able to run despite his Shanzhong acupuncture point being run through and the stellar energy wreaking havoc in his body. The constitution of this foreign cur was far more formidable than he had imagined. Without another word, Luoji gripped his spear and began to run after Giaciluo with a cold glint in his eyes. Giaciluo had already been run through by his spear, and if he really did manage to escape, Luoji would become a laughingstock. Hand over your life! Luoji bellowed, the mountain trembling at the fury in his voice. Giaciluo was on his list of people who had to die. In this war, he had killed countless soldiers of the Annan Protectorate army, and Luoji had wanted nothing more than to find and duel him. Alas, Giaciluo had been incredibly vigilant, almost always noticing him and fleeing. Moreover, he had almost always been accompanied by a large number of soldiers and was practically inseparable from the crown prince of Mengshi Zhao, Fengjie. Although Luoji was extremely confident in his spear, he did not have the confidence to deal with Giaciluo and Fengjie at the same time, much less the large number of experts around them. Bang! 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 Luoji pushed his movement techniques to their maximum extent, leaving behind blur after blur as he moved down the mountain. After him, Su Shiping, Su Anduin, Zhang Long, Zhao Hu, Chun Xiong, Li Ji, Fang Tang, and Zhou Han stared blankly for a few moments before quickly giving chase. The smoothness of this fight had caught them by surprise. Although Death's Scythe had been taught to them by Wang Chong, there had been too little time for them to confirm its strength. It could actually dispel Giaciluo's stellar energy transformation. I simply can't believe it, Su Anduin thought as he continued to accelerate. The closer one was, the more one understood just how powerful Giaciluo was. This sort of ferocity and brutality was like that of a primordial behemoth. It wasn't something any ordinary person could deal with. In addition, he had far more stellar energy than the vast majority of generals. But no one could have expected that single strike to instantly dispel his transformation. Young master's planning abilities are truly inconceivable. A brute like Giaciluo is nothing more than a plaything in young master's palm. Zhang Long, Zhao Hu, Chun Xiong, Li Ji, and the other elites were also invigorated. Zhao Wujiang's feigned retreat was a secret from almost everyone. Only they had understood from the beginning that this was a trap, a net meant to snare Giaciluo. It was precisely because they knew this that they all felt a deep admiration for Wang Chong. The more time they spent with Wang Chong, the more the Black Dragon bandits admired him. They also now completely understood why their lord, who had managed to single-handedly defeat the Black Dragon bandits, showed so much respect to only Wang Chong. Anyone who stops me dies. Putting aside Zhang Long, Zhao Hu, Chun Xiong, Li Ji, and the others in the rear, up ahead Giaciluo was bellowing as he plowed a bloody path, charging forward with more strength than he had ever used in his entire life. Impossible! Impossible! My sword-fanged beast halo is a supreme technique of the Great Snow Mountain Holy Temple. Master said to me before that with my abilities, as long as I didn't encounter someone like Wang Yan or Shenyu Zhongtong, no one would be able to menace me. How could it be dispelled in a single move? How could the Great Tang have someone like this? It was impossible to describe the panic in Giaciluo's heart. The joint attack had completely annihilated all his confidence. Right now, Giaciluo only had a third of his original stellar energy, and this stellar energy was being depleted at an astonishing speed. Such were the results of having his beast transformation forcefully dispelled. A joint attack skill? Which skill was it? In this battle, only Giaciluo was aware that the truly lethal blow that had blown away his stellar energy was not Luoji's spear or Zhao Wujiang, but the joint attack formation formed by those 8 other people. By the time Luoji's spear had stabbed into his body, his stellar energy had already been broken. The Great Tang definitely doesn't have this sort of formation. It must be that brat, it must be. Giaciluo was both astonished and afraid, his entire body trembling. That figure had risen unbidden in his mind. If there was one person who could design such a formation, it was unquestionably that brat. In this more than a month, Giaciluo had never seen such a joint attack formation from the Great Tang. If they had such a thing, they would have used it long ago. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Giaciluo's entire body was shaking, but not with rage. The only thing in his mind was a profound fear. He could guarantee that Zhao Wujiang's feigned defeat to bait him was planned by that boy. In Giaciluo's entire life, he had never felt such fear toward a youth who was weaker than him. Although that boy was clearly much weaker in terms of strength, Giaciluo could not stir any thoughts of revenge. All he felt was fear and an ardent desire to leave this place, leave this mountain. From the battle together with Fenjie to the ambush in the rain and then the ambush of Zhao Wujiang and 9 others just now, Giaciluo could find no interest in fighting in front of that youth. Giaciluo had felt this feeling before, in front of the great minister. Rumble. A peal of thunder came from below the mountain as the neighs of countless horses and the clattering of armor mixed together. Giaciluo could sense that the great general had already begun to move and that a new batch of cavalry and experts was currently charging up the mountain. But they would arrive too late. I have to get back to the army. Only by returning to the Mengshi Yusang ranks can I have any hope of survival. Giaciluo's heart was beating fast and he could smell the stench of death. Never had Giaciluo felt death so close. It felt like a dagger was prodding into his back, pursuing him like his own shadow. No matter where he went, he could not escape. Hand over your life. A heaven-shaking roar suddenly rose behind him. After such a long time, Luoji had finally caught up. Clang. While a dragon's call echoed through the skies, Luoji stomped a foot on the ground. His entire body took off like a cannon shot, the spear in his hands seeming to dance. It was no longer some simple spear, but a dragon, a flood dragon rising from the depths of a deep pool. Roar! Luoji's eyes turned cold as the spear in his hand called out. Suddenly, it transformed into a bolt of lightning aimed right at Giaciluo's back. Not good. Giaciluo was greatly startled, feeling like his soul had left his body. In the past, he would have been able to block Luoji's spear, but right now his strength was utterly insufficient. Boom! Suddenly, a Tibetan scimitar flew out of the void and struck Luoji's spear. This spear, which had been imbued with destructive energy, was jolted away. Protect General! A mustachioed Tibetan officer riding on a horse brushed past Giaciluo, his eyes narrowed and gleaming with a sharp light as he leaped toward Luoji. Kubachuo! Giaciluo's eyes widened in shock. He recognized this officer, but it wasn't one of his subordinates. But Kubachuo paid no attention to Giaciluo. Clang! His scimitar was already slashing at Luoji. Impudent! Such was Luoji's strength that even Giaciluo was wary of him. So why did he need to fear these other Tibetan officers? Bang! A single palm was enough to shatter the horse's head and send the body of that muscular highland steed flying off together with the general on its back. But mere moments after he dispatched the Tibetan officer, more neighs could be heard as another 7 or 8 Tibetan officers charged forward on their highland steeds. These Tibetan officers all had fierce gazes and seemed anxious to fight, their halos of thorns shining under their feet. They were clearly ready to offer their lives to take down their enemies. Luoji blocked 5 or 6 of these exceptionally fierce Tibetan officers, but even a peerless spearman like Luoji was somewhat slowed by this onslaught of Tibetan officers and was unable to continue his pursuit. Bang bang bang. Luoji was far from the only being delayed. These Tibetan officers who had seemingly come out of thin air were heedlessly charging at Su Shiping, Su Anduin, Zhang Long, Zhao Hu, Chen Xiong, Li Ji. All the people chasing Giaciluo were being obstructed. Damn it! Even like this, he still managed to escape. On the summit, Chun Shu-sun was stamping his feet in vexation. Giaciluo was an enormous threat on the battlefield, and he had killed a great number of Tang soldiers. If he managed to escape from Wang Chong's trap this time, then it would be even more difficult to kill him in the future. Moreover, though Luoji's spear had pierced through his chest and dealt him a severe injury, this sort of injury was not enough to be lethal. Besides, the Tibetan army had no small number of medicines from the secret reserves of the Great Snow Mountain with them. As long as Giaciluo didn't die, he might soon be bursting with energy once more. By that time, his renewed caution and his inherent ferocity would lead to the deaths of countless more Tang soldiers. But this was not the greatest of Chen Shusan's worries. Aya! While Luoji, Su Shiping, Su Anduin and the others were being held by the Tibetan officers, they suddenly heard a scream. This scream was not from Giaciluo, but from Zhao Wujiang behind them. Long Kinba! Zhao Wujiang hollered as he was suddenly sent flying out of the ranks like a rag doll, hurtling toward the summit. Bang! The metal walls trembled as Zhao Wujiang smashed against one of these thick steel pieces. Vomiting blood, his entire person seemed much weaker. At some point, a stalwart figure, brimming with a destructive aura, had stood up from the crowd. His hair lay spread out behind his back in a wild fashion, and the scarlet scimitar in his hand was striking beyond compare. Long Kinba! This sudden sight stupefied everyone. Even Luoji paled, and in his panic, almost lost a limb to a Tibetan officer. He recognized that muscular figure. The Annan Protectorate Army and the Tibetan could both recognize the high-ranking generals of the opposing side. Long Kinba, the head of the 5 Tiger Generals, the strongest defensive general under Huashu Huizong's command. This person's fighting power was even more terrifying than Giaciluo's, and his martial arts far surpassed Giaciluo. But this was far from Luoji's only concern. How did he appear here? Luoji's heart shivered as he suddenly felt an intense danger. Longqinba was the leader of the 5 tiger generals, but Luoji had not noticed him at all until he struck. Moreover, only a short time had elapsed since the initial ambush of Jiasiluo. Even if the Tibetans wanted to rescue him, they didn't have time, not unless Daluan Ruozan. In the blink of an eye, Luoji and Chen Shusun, in separate places on the battlefield, immediately had the same thought. There was only one possibility for Longqinba's swift appearance. Before Jiasiluo's ambush, he had already quietly mixed into the army. Only 2 people could have made such arrangements. If it wasn't Daluan Ruozan, then it was Huashu Huaitsong. Zhao Wujiang's in trouble. There was no time to think. A chorus of neighs and furious bellows came from the summit as the high-ranking generals of the Annan Protectorate Army began to mount their horses and charge down to Zhao Wujiang's location. But all of this was too late. Jiasiluo was no fool. So for the sake of baiting him, Zhao Wujiang had truly taken a blow. It was only because Longqinba had noticed this that he had thought of ambushing Zhao Wujiang. At present, Jiasiluo was still alive while Zhao Wujiang seemed to have entered desperate straits. Bang! With an arch of his right foot, Longqinba jumped off the ground like a loosed arrow aimed straight at Zhao Wujiang. His sharp and fierce energy penetrated through space to lock onto Zhao Wujiang. Boom! This massive strike sent that metal wall section weighing several thousand jin flying away while Zhao Wujiang himself barely managed to dodge. Stop him! Quickly save Lord Zhao! This sudden mishap had truly taken everyone by surprise. At almost the same time, Luo Ji, Su Shiping, Su Anduin, Zhang Long, Zhao Hu, Chen Xiong, Li Ji and others all put aside Jiasiluo and lunged toward Longqinba. Jiasiluo had already avoided one disaster, and the experts of the Mengshi Yusang army had already gathered around him. Pursuing him was not guaranteed to result in anything, but if they ignored Zhao Wujiang, then he truly might die. Longqinba was not an easy person to deal with. Ha ha ha! Great minister, great general! Jiasiluo rejoiced upon seeing that Longqinba had come to his aid. He didn't need to think much to know that this had been a plan of the great minister and great general. The Tang had schemed against him, but the great minister had schemed against the Tang. Great minister, I knew that you wouldn't stand around and do nothing. Jiasiluo was immediately relieved, and that feeling of sharpness at his back had completely vanished. Jiasiluo knew that he had successfully escaped. This time, Jiasiluo had no desire to stop or any thought of achieving any more merit for himself, much less turning around and working together with Longqinba. The urgent task was currently to preserve his life. As he ran down the mountain, Jiasiluo failed to notice that a pair of eyes was watching him. Though these eyes quickly vanished, Daluan Ruozan and Huashu Huaitsong, this minister and general from the Ngari royal lineage, truly aren't easy to deal with. At the base of the mountain, Zheluofeng suddenly sighed. Even he had not been informed that Longqinba was hidden amongst the army. It was clear that Daluan Ruozan and Huashu Huaitsong had long ago laid their plans, and that the youngest son of the Wang clan had fallen for Daluan Ruozan's scheme. His reputation as a wise minister was no vain boast. A cold and indifferent voice came from behind him, one that could only belong to Mengshi Zhao great General Duan Gachuan. His voice was as calm as water, and placid as an ancient well. Not even Longqinba's appearance had elicited much emotion from him. However, not even a wise minister could have predicted Zhao Wujiang trapping Jiasiluo. Even without the ambush against Jiasiluo, Longqinba would still have been seeking an opportunity to ambush the Tang. Daluan Ruozan has never done anything for purely one purpose. It looks like the rumors aren't false. Zheluofeng sighed, but this time he was using a voice transmission art. It was no secret that experts at his level could control sound waves to send messages over short distances. It was evident that Zheluofeng did not wish for Daluan Ruozan or Huashu Huaitsong to overhear his conversation with Duan Gachuan. Gachuan, in the future, when we interact with the Tibetans, especially with Daluan Ruozan, we have to be very careful, Zheluofeng said. Being allies with them is enough. With one great Tang, they won't have the time to deal with us, Duan Gachuan indifferently remarked. In the middle of the mountain, the situation was looking dire. "Hurry and protect my lord." From the moment Long Qinba revealed himself, the Tang soldiers in a radius of several hundred zhang began to move, one square after another beginning to charge toward the leader of the 5 tiger generals. Boom! But before they could get close, a majestic burst of stellar energy arose from Long Qinba's body. Screaming, the neat formations of the Anan Protectorate army were thrown into the distance, these elite soldiers crashing to the ground with bones broken and muscles torn, their blood spattering the ground. Long Qinba's offensive abilities were far greater than Jiasiluo's, so the Tang soldiers had far greater injuries than the ones who were attacked by Jiasiluo. Bang! After casting aside one formation, Long Qinba once more charged toward Zhao Wujiang. Halt! The worried Su Shiping immediately lunged toward Long Qinba. In the pursuit of Jiasiluo, he had been the one farthest behind, so he was the first to arrive on the scene. Zhao Wujiang is currently heavily injured and definitely won't be able to last for long. "I have to stop him," Su Shiping said to himself. He had never once felt so worried. "Shiping! Careful! Lord Su, careful! Quickly, protect Lord Su!" At this very moment, a burst of alarmed shouts came from around him. Su Shiping was still trying to understand why when a massive energy suddenly began to thunder toward him. Not good! Before Su Shiping could react, an iron elbow imbued with a terrifying destructive force smashed into his chest. "Aya!" Su Shiping screamed as half his chest caved in and blood exploded from his mouth. "Go and die!" While everyone was watching, Long Qinba had suddenly stopped pursuing Zhao Wujiang and turned toward Su Shiping. His elbow had struck his chest and sent him flying. "Somebody catch my lord!" The Tang soldiers paled in fright as they rushed up to catch Su Shiping. Luoji's eyes reddened as he also rushed to assist. "Halt!" Raising his spear, Luoji blocked the scimitar that Long Qinba was slashing down at Su Anduin. Clang! The clash of scimitar and spear made Luoji's hand go numb, and he was forced to retreat 7 or 8 steps. Meanwhile, Long Qinba stood like a towering mountain, coldly sneering at Luoji. "This is looking bad." At this moment, Luoji's heart was sinking like a stone. Long Qinba's attacks were even sharper than his and far more powerful. But this was not Luoji's greatest worry. Young Master's formation is broken. This thought flashed through Luoji's mind. Long Qinba was even more cunning and difficult to deal with than Jiasiluo. Although he had acted like he was aiming for Zhao Wujiang, he had actually been planning to injure Su Shiping. With Su Shiping heavily injured, the 8-person joint attack formation was immediately shattered. And without Wang Chong's Death Scythe joint attack formation, none of the people present would be able to deal with the head of the 5 tiger generals. Humph! As Long Qinba towered above like some demonic god, he stared at Luoji and snorted with undisguised contempt in his eyes. Then his body swayed as he began charging up the mountain, ignoring Luoji. Not good! Luoji's expression immediately tightened as he began chasing after Long Qinba. "General, I've come to help you." At the same time, Su Anduin, Zhang Long, Chun Xiong, Li Ji, and the others arrived, and the 9 of them chased after Long Qinba together. Action was taking place in 2 places, each with its own story. While Long Qinba was chasing after Zhao Wujiang with no one able to stop him, elsewhere, Jiasiluo was about to reach his horse. Blood was ceaselessly flowing from his body, and his injuries were only growing more severe. That condensed and tyrannical stream of stellar energy that Luoji had unleashed was still wreaking havoc in his body. But Jiasiluo was not terribly worried, as the Great Minister had a very close relationship to the Great Snow Mountain Holy Temple. In addition, the Great Minister had many secret medicines from the Great Snow Mountain Holy Temple with him. Just one of them would be enough to staunch his wounds and put him on the path to recovery. Perhaps he would only need a few days to recover 50 to 60% of his strength and return to the battlefield. And perhaps if he asked very kindly, he could obtain one of those divine medicines that would soon have him vigorous and energetic in no time. The Great Snow Mountain Holy Temple had a long legacy that even surpassed the Yusang Empire. It had a few top-class medicines with effects that outsiders could never imagine. BZZT. As Jiasiluo was staggering along, only a few zhang from his warhorse, a figure suddenly appeared. A Mengshi Zhao soldier covered from head to toe in armor had seemingly accidentally blocked his path. "Get out of my way!" Giaciluo's right hand extended, impatient to push this soldier out of the way. But just when Giaciluo was about to push, the Mengshi Zhao soldier suddenly raised their head to glance at Giaciluo. At that moment, Giaciluo felt like he had seen a light of dazzling cold in that soldier's eyes. His two hands paused in midair as his heart froze, gripped by the feeling that disaster was about to strike. Aya! On the mountain, Longqinba was doggedly pursuing Zhao Wujiang, hindering the 9 other members of that pursuit party and sweeping away everything before him. He had attracted everyone's attention, even causing the lines of the Anan Protectorate army to crumble. Suddenly, however, he heard a scream. So heartrending was this scream that it gave everyone a fright. This was not a scream a normal person would give. Only a dying person could make such a scream. Giaciluo, at the base of the mountain, in the middle of a sea of armored cavalry. Daluan Ruozan suddenly paled as he twisted his head toward that scream. He recognized the voice as Giaciluo's. But hadn't he dispatched Longqinba and already saved him? Moreover, wasn't he already in the middle of the Mengshi Yusang ranks? Why did he make such a grievous scream? Daluan Ruozan suddenly had an extremely bad feeling. At almost the same time, in the Mengshi Zhao camp, Zheluofeng's strongest subordinate, Great General Duan Guqiu, suddenly opened his mouth and declared with a tiny hint of emotion in his voice, "Giaciluo is finished." Time seemed to stop at this moment. Finally, everyone noticed where that voice had come from. Right where the Mengshi Zhao and Tibetan armies intersected, a young Mengshi Zhao soldier had pierced his spear through Giaciluo's heart and was now raising aloft his giant figure. The sword-fanged beast Giaciluo, who had once freely reigned over the southwest battlefield, slaughtering countless great Tang soldiers, was now a lifeless piece of meat hanging from the spear of a Mengshi Zhao soldier, his hands and feet lightly swaying in the wind. Killed. Giaciluo had been killed, and killed an inch away from success, mere moments from reaching his steed, by a Mengshi Zhao soldier. But even so, everyone knew that this was no Mengshi Zhao soldier. Wang Chong, without any reason, that thin figure and the brash and domineering aura it exuded immediately made Daluan Ruozan think of one person. Daluan Ruozan could only think of one person who, in these circumstances, on the complicated battlefield, could predict Giaciluo's path of retreat and successfully kill him at the last moment. Wang Chong, that great Tang youth who had caused all the problems for the Mengshi Yusang army. Swoosh! A dark red sword plunged into Giaciluo's body, sucking out the last drop of his stellar energy. That Mengshi Zhao soldier suddenly swelled in strength, his aura only continuing to grow stronger. Ha! With a shake of the spear, Giaciluo's body was thrown several zhang away like a pile of trash. While the Mengshi Yusang army was still dumbstruck, that Mengshi Zhao soldier immediately began to charge up the mountain. "Seize him! Spy! He's a Tang! Don't let him escape!" Cries of fury and alarm echoed through the sky as the Mengshi Yusang soldiers began to roar in their respective languages as they pursued that Mengshi Zhao soldier. In particular, the faces of the Mengshi Zhao soldiers were pale from rage. A valiant general of Yusang had actually been killed by a Mengshi Zhao soldier. If this caused a misunderstanding with the Tibetans, it would present a major threat to Mengshi Zhao. More importantly, a person like Giaciluo could never have been killed by some ordinary Mengshi Zhao soldier. This person had to be a Tang. Giaciluo is dead. Duan Wuzong is injured. All generals, hear my order. Ignore Longqinba. Full advance. Wipe out the Mengshi Yusang army. While everyone was chasing that Mengshi Zhao soldier, a thunderous voice suddenly exploded through the air. Everyone was extremely familiar with this voice. It was Wang Chong's. While the Mengshi Yusang army might have been indifferent the first time Wang Chong said those words, when he repeated them in the languages of Yusang and Mengshi Zhao, everything instantly changed. Boom! With a startling rumble, the entire Tang army suddenly underwent a transformation. All the Tang formations gave up the pursuit of Longkinba and began charging down the mountain. Acting like the leader of the 5 tiger generals simply did not exist. Kai Il. At the same time, the tens of thousands of Tang soldiers stretching from the middle of the mountain to the summit, who had all been following their orders and not participating in the battle, suddenly yelled out and surged down the mountain like a wave. From the moment Xianxia led his Tibetan soldiers up the mountain, from the moment Longkinba appeared, the nature of this battle had changed. This was no longer some probing offense, but a true battle. Buzz. The Mengshi Yusang army that had originally been chasing Wang Chong finally began to appear fearful. Even the bravest of these warriors began to show fear in their eyes when they saw the fresh Tang troops rushing down the mountain in a flood of steel. The voice had been completely correct. Duan Wuzong had left the battlefield with heavy injuries, while Xianxia had been killed. Meanwhile, the only commander left who could fight and lead the army was Longkinba, who was up the mountain trying to take down Zhao Wujiang. The Whitestone Corps and the Tibetan army were truly a host of dragons without a leader. Regardless of Longkinba's initial plan, from the moment he infiltrated the Tang army and ambushed Zhao Wujiang, he had taken leave of his own troops. Longkinba's existence was currently unrelated to the state of the army. Damn it! In the roiling tide of troops, Longkinba's figure was like that of a fierce beast, his domineering aura inspiring dread. But when he saw that tide of steel howling down the mountain, Longkinba couldn't help but pale as a hint of apprehension entered his heart. A sufficient number of ants could even kill an elephant. In the current situation, no matter how strong he was, he would soon end up too deep in the enemy ranks. Once figures like Shen Yuzhongtong and Wang Yan appeared, it would be too late to retreat. Although Wang Chong had said to ignore Longkinba, this order actually made Longkinba even more fearful. No matter what, I'll think about what to do after killing Zhao Wujiang. Longkinba's expression hardened as he made his decision. No matter what decision the Great Tang made, he first had to kill Zhao Wujiang. With Xianxia dead, Zhao Wujiang also had to die. Besides, he had suffered heavy injuries and wasn't far from death. Bzzzt. Longkinba brought his palms together. Clang, clang, clang. There was a series of deafening metal clanks as if gears were coming to life. A massive 10-armed bodhisattva of dark golden hue manifested behind Longkinba. Its 10 arms unfurled like 10 sharp swords, appearing like some sort of metallic sun in the air. At the same time, a massive grinding came from beneath Longkinba's feet. With the support of a massive black halo of thorns, Longkinba became as strong as a demonic god. Boom! Longkinba swayed before he suddenly swept forward like a black gale. Rumble! Wild winds brashly swept over the mountain, and powerful waves of energy swept aside Luoji, Suanduan, the Black Dragon bandit elites, and the surrounding Anan Protectorate army soldiers. Longkinba's strength was now at a truly stupefying level. Clang! A cold light flashed through the air as Longkinba leaped forward, the scimitar in his hand leaving a long scar through the air as it hurtled toward Zhao Wujiang Tensum Zhang away. So fierce was this scimitar that it immediately stirred a fierce wind and seemed ready to tear open the skies. Longkinba's ambush and the injury Zhao Wujiang had received from baiting Xianxia left him utterly drained of stellar energy and unable to dodge. Just when Zhao Wujiang was about to die to Longkinba's scimitar, boom! There was a glint of light as a sword infused with stellar energy smashed against Longkinba's scimitar. The force of this collision sent the wielder of this sword flying back along with his sword. However, Longkinba's certain kill strike had been thrown off course. Crash! Hitting the ground, the muscular figure of an Anan Protectorate army general staggered back a few steps, his chest heaving. It appeared that he had come off much worse in this clash. Lin Wuxiu. Luoji yelped in surprise, an elated look on his face as he charged forward with Su Anduin and the rest of the Black Dragon bandit elites. Together with the high-ranking General Lin Wuxiu, they opposed Longkinba. It's useless. You lot aren't enough to stop me. Longkinba's eyes flashed with a fierce light as a majestic stellar energy began to roil through his body like a storm. He didn't have much time left, but it was enough time to kill these few people. In a flash, just when Longkinba was about to commence a mass slaughter, a voice suddenly rang out. Luo Ji, Su Anduin, Zhang Hu attack his right rib together. Lin Wuxiu, an annihilating strike 2 inches to the left of the Bai Hui point on his head. Luo Ji was the first to respond. Boom! The halo under Luo Ji's feet flashed as the thick silver spear left his hand and instantly arrived at Long Qinba's right rib. Lin Wuxiu reacted right after. With a rumble, a light stabbed straight toward Long Qinba's head. "Milord! Young master!" The last to react were Su Anduin and the Black Dragon Bandit elites as they finally recognized Wang Chang's voice. Clang, clang, clang. The 7 people immediately shot forward, the Wut's steel weapons in their hands slashing toward the muscular figure of Long Qinba. And behind these 7 was the final attacker, Wang Chong. Clang. A stream of light zigzagged through the crowd. Before anyone could react, Wang Chong had come with his sword, using his most powerful technique. Leaping Dragon Art. A massive flood dragon seemed to coil up into the air. Upon reaching a certain height, it suddenly streaked down like a bolt of lightning, crackling down over Long Qinba's head. Boom! There was a heaven-shaking boom as Luo Ji's spear, Lin Wuxiu's sword, Wang Chong's leaping dragon art, and the combined attacks of Su Anduin and the Black Dragon elites were all stopped by an invisible barrier. In a split second, a majestic and hardy wall of stellar energy had expanded out of Long Qinba's body. Hiss! A chorus of gasps came from the surrounding area as all the Anan Protectorate army soldiers who witnessed this sight felt a shiver run down their backs. Long Qinba's reserves of stellar energy had reached an unthinkable level. Although he didn't have a sturdy transformation like Jiasiluo's sword-fanged beast, he had been able to rely on his vigorous reserves of stellar energy to achieve a similar result. Whoosh! While everyone was stunned at Long Qinba's mighty stellar energy, there was a flash of bloody light. Without any warning, a stream of sword chi pierced through Long Qinba's many layers of stellar energy, shooting straight toward his head. Long Qinba almost immediately tilted his head, causing this lethal strike to miss him by a hair. The sword chi instead struck his back. Schlick! A wound suddenly appeared, blood gushing forth. Stellar Energy Piercer. Wang Chong's strike had actually managed to trigger the rare effect of the Stellar Energy Piercer. What martial art is this? Long Qinba roared. Even someone of his composure couldn't help but pale at this point. As someone raised by the Great Snow Mountain Holy Temple, he had seen all kinds of martial arts, yet he had never encountered such a thing. His stellar energy had clearly stopped Wang Chong's attack, yet that stream of sword chi had inexplicably managed to get through all of it. Even Luo Ji couldn't do such a thing, yet the weakling Wang Chong had succeeded. If he hadn't reacted so promptly, Wang Chong's sword chi would have struck a critical point on his head. Bzzzt. Instead of answering, Wang Chong unsheathed a sword from his waist with his left hand and stabbed it toward Long Qinba. The more times he attacked, the more chances the Stellar Energy Piercer would have to trigger. Although he still didn't have a complete grasp over it, he was certain of one thing. As long as he attacked 4 times, the Stellar Energy Piercer would undoubtedly activate on the 5th attempt. This was the best method to deal with an expert with reserves of stellar energy as deep as Long Qinba's. This was also Wang Chong's only way of threatening him. This time, however, before Wang Chong could strike, Long Qinba pushed out with his arms, causing a fierce wave of tyrannical stellar energy to explode from his body. There was only a massive boom as Wang Chong, Luo Ji, Lin Wuxiu, Su Anduin, everyone was jolted away. Long Qinba was inconceivably powerful. But this time, despite the success of his attack, no pleasure could be seen on Long Qinba's face, nor any of that previous confidence. Damn it, this brat can have his formidable military arts, but where did he learn that strange technique from? Long Qinba stood like an iron tower on the mountain slope, his dreadful eyes burning with killing intent as he stared at Wang Chong in the back of the crowd. Wang Chong's appearance had suddenly made this battle extremely disadvantageous to him. It wasn't merely because of Wang Chong's strange stellar energy piercer that couldn't be defended against. More importantly, the places Wang Chong had pointed out moments before were the flaws in his defense that he had still not properly tempered. The martial arts of the Great Snow Mountain Holy Temple were famed for their power, but they were also famed for being difficult to cultivate. Despite cultivating them for 10-some years, achieving great success, he was still clearly quite some distance from perfection. And his right rib and the Baihui point on his head were precisely the locations of his flaws. Wang Chong had even managed to specifically pinpoint his weakness as being 2 inches to the left of the Baihui point, which truly made Longkinba apprehensive. That location was his fatal weakness. A fierce killing intent instantly began to boil within Longkinba's mind. But Wang Chong had already made ready, positioning himself behind Luo Ji and Lin Wuxiu. Even if Longkinba wanted to strike, his chances of success were 0. Longkinba, withdraw! A voice rang out like a peal of thunder. At the base of the mountain, the looming figure of Huoshu Huaitsong, the unmoving mountain, had suddenly taken a step forward and issued an order in Tibetan. Bzzzt. This order was so sudden that let alone Longkinba, even Wang Chong was shocked. Longkinba had been doubtful at the start, but he quickly noticed something. Turning around, he jumped forward and began to charge down the mountain without another word. What a pity! As Wang Chong watched Longkinba streak down the mountain like a bolt of lightning, he couldn't help but sigh. That's right. Truly a pity. If we had managed to delay him for just a little longer, Longkinba wouldn't be able to leave even if he wanted to. Although he didn't react, Huoshu Huaitsong did. Luo Ji replied, "What a waste of an opportunity." A voice came from the rear, only around 50 zhang from Wang Chong's group, as a few figures began to emerge. Longkinba had left, so these people no longer needed to conceal their energies. One by one, they began to exude auras as mighty as storms. Every one of them was at the level of Luo Ji and Lin Wuxiu. It was clear that these people were some of the highest-ranking generals of the Annan Protectorate Army. The Annan Protectorate Army might not have much of anything else, but it was replete with high-ranking generals. If Longkinba had been just a little slower, these 10-some generals would have joined with Wang Chong and Luo Ji's group, and then together with the thousands of Annan Protectorate Army elites in the surroundings, they would have forced Longkinba to remain. Kai Il! With the fight over, it was only these heaven-shaking roars that made them realize that a fierce battle was still taking place. Without Duan Wuzong or Jiasiluo, and with Longkinba retreating, the remaining Whitestone Corps soldiers and Tibetan cavalry were incapable of stopping the charge of the Annan Protectorate Army. Like a receding tide, they retreated back down the mountain. "Young master, what should we do now?" Everyone began to look toward Wang Chong. Humph. Huoshu Huaitsong wants to retreat. But can he retreat without leaving anything behind? Wang Chong was still wearing the Mengshi Zhao armor as he looked down the mountain and sneered. Before retreating, the dense ranks of the Mengshi Yusang army had gotten almost halfway up the mountain. Right now, the surface of the mountain was covered with 80 to 90,000 Mengshi Zhao and Yusang soldiers. Wang Chong had already achieved the initial objective of his plan. If Huoshu Huaitsong thought that he could have his army retreat in one piece at this time, then he was truly underestimating him. Begin the plan. Generals, return to your positions and begin the harvest. Yes, young master. Everyone had complete faith in Wang Chong by now, and each of them swiftly left, even Luo Ji. As for the heavily injured Zhao Wujiang and Su Shiping, there were people ready to take them elsewhere for recovery. The slopes were covered in the sounds of fighting, with the charging Great Tang soldiers succeeding in holding down many Mengshi Zhao and Yusang warriors. It's about time. Wang Chong coldly laughed as he raised the curtain to the most important part of this battle. Boom! Wang Chong raised his right foot high and then smashed it into the ground. For a moment, the entire world seemed to grow quiet, with even time seeming to come to a stop. As Wang Chong's right foot hit the ground, ripples began to expand across the battlefield. None of the Great Tang soldiers noticed these ripples, but there was a flash of light beneath the feet of a Mengshi Zhao soldier some 100 zhang from Wang Chong, the flickering of a milky white halo. Then there was a second, a third, a fourth. In just a few seconds, all the Whitestone Corps and Tibetan soldiers on the mountain were touched by these ripples. Without any warning, in the space of a few seconds, the cultivation level of all the Mengshi Yusang soldiers on the mountain rapidly dropped several tiers. What's going on here? They all shouted in alarm. The Mengshi Yusang soldiers had been on nearly equal strength with the Annan Protectorate Army, but at this moment, Their power suddenly dropped several layers in all aspects. Strength, speed, dexterity. Even those who were fleeing could feel their speed dropping. None of them could have ever expected such a thing. On the other side, all the great Tang soldiers were energized. Given that they were mortal enemies, they were far too familiar with the soldiers of Mengshi Zhao and Yusang. The Annan Protectorate army had immediately noticed the change in the Mengshi Yusang army. Kai Il! A burst of astonishing roars filled the skies as the entire Annan Protectorate army redoubled their efforts. Bang bang bang. One after another, Mengshi Zhao and Tibetan soldiers fell. These opponents who had once been like violent gods had suddenly become unbearably weak. What was already a losing battle coupled with the sudden drop in strength resulted in close to 10,000 deaths on the Mengshi Yusang side in mere moments. Flee! The rout spread through the Mengshi Yusang army like the plague, with even the Tibetan cavalry, famed for their valor, falling into complete panic. Kill! While the Mengshi Yusang forces madly fled in the front, the Annan Protectorate army madly pursued from the rear. Corpses covered the ground and rivers of blood flowed. All this happened without any guidance from Wang Chong. Daluan Ruozhen. Now it's my turn to see what moves you have. Wang Chong coldly chuckled as he turned around and began to leisurely stride toward the summit. The fully armored soldiers of the Great Tang were charging past him, but whenever they got close, they would always yield to the sides of their own volition. Young master! On the summit, Chun Shu-sun was elated and gave a respectful bow. His expression was even more reverential than the one he would show to Shen Yuzhongtong or Wang Yan. Chun Shu-sun had completely submitted himself to Wang Chong. Daluan Ruozhen had arranged for Longqinba to mix into the army with the intent of ambushing and killing a Tang commander. In the end, however, he had been missing that final step. Not only had his plan been ruined by Wang Chong, he had even had to pay one Jiasiluo. Jiasiluo had managed to escape disaster after disaster, had even managed to reach the Mengshi Yusang army, only several zhang from his mount. But he had still fallen before Wang Chong. From start to finish, he had never managed to escape Wang Chong's schemes. This fierce Tibetan general who had killed so many of the great Tang soldiers had finally been slain at Wang Chong's hands. If Wang Chong had not killed him, it was difficult to say how many more Tang soldiers he would have killed. There's no need for all this courtesy. Wang Chong waved his hands, took off the Mengshi Zhao helmet, and threw it to the side. In the battle with Fenjie, he had obtained a few suits of Mengshi Zhao armor which he had finally used on this occasion. In the war between the Great Tang and Mengshi Zhao, the people of Mengshi Zhao had many times disguised themselves as Tang to seek out news, spy on the Tang forces, and even attempt assassinations. The people of Mengshi Zhao had used this method, so Wang Chong was only giving them a taste of their own medicine. Once he had removed the Mengshi Zhao armor, Wang Chong reached out his right hand toward that unmoving other Wang Chong, standing beneath the banner. Young master, your subordinate did not let you down. The bodyguard who had been disguising himself as Wang Chong removed his helmet and bowed as he respectfully placed the helmet in Wang Chong's hands. Although Wang Chong was still very young, no one in the army dared to underestimate him. General Chun, have you finished preparations for the next phase? Wang Chong unhurriedly asked as he took the armor from the thin guard and slowly began to put it on. With the losses the Mengshi Yusang army took this time around, they definitely won't let the matter go. This battle is far from over. As he spoke, his gaze drifted down the mountain to where the battle-hardened elites of the Great Tang were silently standing in their ranks like a forest of spears. These approximately 40,000 warriors were Wang Chong's last move and his last resort. It was still far too early for them to be used. Young master, be at ease. Everything has been done as you ordered, Chun Shu-sun sternly replied. He basically regarded Wang Chong as a god at this point. No matter what order Wang Chong had for him, even if it was telling him to jump off a cliff, Chun Shu-sun would carry it out without hesitation. Wang Chong smiled and nodded, saying no more. Daluan Ruozhen, it's your turn. Zhao Wujiang and Jiasiluo's fight was only the first exchange between Wang Chong and the wise minister of Yusang, Daluan Ruozhen. Now came the second exchange. Wang Chong was deeply aware that he now had the complete attention of the Ngari royal lineage's great minister. Longkinba's appearance had been the best evidence of this. "You've truly got me caught up in anticipation. Daluan Ruozhen, with me here you will never succeed." Wang Chong once more stood at the summit and looked down at that silk-robed figure with his feather fan at the base of the mountain. Even to great generals of the Central Plains like Geshu Han or Fuming Lingcha, Daluan Ruozhen was still an extremely troublesome existence. It was said that the Tibetans had only come south due to the requests from the king of Mengshi Zhao, Zheluofeng. But in Wang Chong's view, the Tibetans would have come south even without Zheluofeng's request. Daluan Ruozhen was the director behind the curtains, the one who had ordered those more than 200,000 cavalry to charge down the plateau. Huashu Huizong was only the knife in his hand. The southwest had never been his objective. Daluan Ruozhen's ambitions were far greater than Zheluofeng's, and what he wanted was far more than Zheluofeng could ever give. If no one stopped him, Daluan Ruozhen would eventually become a mortal affliction for the Great Tang. "So, come then. This place will be your final stop, Daluan Ruozhen." Wang Chong's clothes flapped in the wind as he aimed his fiery gaze at that distant figure down below. At the same time, a fierce wind was also gusting down below. Daluan Ruozhen stood in the ranks of the army, his hair blown into disarray by the gale. Daluan Ruozhen's mind at this moment was as difficult to calm as the wind. On the mountain, the Mengshi Yusang army was being cut down like weeds, their corpses rolling down the mountain. This sight was a heavy shock to the entire army. At this moment, the entirety of the army had an unprecedented understanding of the strength of the 100,000 Tang soldiers on the mountain. But things were different for Daluan Ruozhen. Daluan Ruozhen could sense in the air an unspoken challenge. "He's challenging me." Daluan Ruozhen's expression turned grave as he gazed at that figure on the summit. No one dared to use this sort of method to challenge him at this sort of place. Not even Zhangzhou Jianxiong had ventured to do such a thing. Yet this boy from the capital of the Great Tang had dared. Jiasiluo's death was not some isolated incident. It was a silent pronouncement and challenge. It was a challenge that Wang Chong had issued to him. "All troops, prepare to attack." On the mountain, both the Whitestone Corps and the Tibetan cavalry were fleeing. At this moment, not even a fierce general like Longkinba could do anything. Seeing all these soldiers being cut down like weeds, Huashu Huizong finally issued an order. "Wait a moment." Daluan Ruozhen suddenly came to his senses and told Huashu Huizong to stop. "There's no need to send more troops, nor would there be any meaning to it. Didn't we get a batch of celestial wolf bows from the Western Turks not too long ago? Great minister means." With a thought, Huashu Huizong seemed to understand what Daluan Ruozhen was getting at. "It's about time to use those celestial wolf bows anyway. Tell them to move out," Daluan Ruozhen said. This time, Huashu Huizong had no objections. Although Daluan Ruozhen was somewhat overstepping his bounds by meddling in military matters as a civil minister, Huashu Huizong had always known that he had never been a purely civil minister. After all, it was from him that he had first obtained those military texts from the Central Plains. Although Daluan Ruozhen's methods might have been unsuitable at other occasions, they were ideal at this time. But it did seem a little cruel. "Didn't you hear? Celestial Wolf Cavalry. Prepare to move out." Huashu Huizong's eyes gleamed as he made up his mind. Dust began to rise as the sounds of horses trotting rose from within the army. It took mere moments for a unit of fully armored Tibetan cavalry to gallop out of the army. Unlike other Tibetan cavalry, each one of these horsemen was carrying a massive celestial wolf bow on his back. Each celestial wolf bow was made from top-quality Phoebe Jinan wood, and was 4 to 5 feet tall, towering over the heads of the riders. The gray wolf fur used to cover these bows clearly indicated their origins. Only the Western Turks who lived on the steppe and deserts to the northwest of the Great Tang used this kind of bow. Although the Western Turks were far inferior to the Great Tang in terms of metal smelting and weapon forging, and had always been lacking in access to metals, they were head and shoulders above the Great Tang in terms of bow-making. The bows of the Western Turks possessed a power second only to the power of Great Tang ballistae. And compared to a ballista, these bows were much easier to construct. Get ready! In response to this resounding voice, the celestial wolf bows creaked as they were pulled taut. A forest of arrowheads was aimed at the mountain. Release! Twang twang twang. With an almost deafening clatter, thousands of arrows whistled through the sky, dragging out trails in the air before landing on the mountain. Aya! Screams suddenly filled the air. One Mengshi Zhao soldier had barely walked 2 steps when an arrow ended his life, stabbing through his throat, penetrating through his collarbone, and sinking into his internal organs. The Mengshi Zhao soldier thudded to the ground, smashing into a pool of blood. And as if this was some sort of signal, thwish thwish thwish, thousands of arrows followed, gleaming with cold light as they covered the skies in a lethal rain. Mengshi Zhao, Tibetan, Tang, Huashu Huaitsong's attack was all-encompassing. In a circle covering the entire mountain, the intersection of the Tang, Mengshi Zhao, and Tibetan forces came under an intense arrow volley. There was no friend or foe, no particular target. Everyone within this area was struck down. Aya! Screams resonated through the mountain slopes as countless Mengshi Zhao, Tibetan, and Tang soldiers immediately collapsed under this sudden rain of arrows. Enemy attack! Careful! When they discovered that these arrows were not coming from the Great Tang, but from their own side, all the Mengshi Zhao and Yusang soldiers fighting were stupefied. They could understand firing at the Anan Protectorate army, but why were they also the target of this attack? What in the world is going on? Soldier after soldier crashed to the ground, their eyes wide in confusion. It's the celestial wolf bows and celestial wolf arrows of the Western Turks. Careful! Hurry, dodge! On the slope, the Anan Protectorate army soldiers began to get out of the way of the celestial wolf bows. The charge in the rear was also beginning to come to a halt. Your Majesty, what are the Tibetans doing? Have they gone crazy? They're attacking their own. Damn it! These madmen! As they watched the warriors of the Whitestone Corps fall to arrows from their own side, the Mengshi Zhao general's eyes went red from rage. The Whitestone Corps was the primary force in this offense, with the Tibetans only looking to lose around 10,000 soldiers on the mountain at maximum. The majority of the people dying under this attack were Mengshi Zhao soldiers. Moreover, the Tibetans were wearing plate armor, which had a defensive power that surpassed even the armor worn by the Anan Protectorate army, let alone the Mengshi Zhao army. Their plate armor and their few numbers meant that the Tibetans suffered far fewer casualties. Your Majesty, let me bring some people to talk with the Tibetans. What if I lead the army to save our brothers? That would be fine as well. The Mengshi Zhao generals were all extremely distraught at the sight of so many casualties on the slope. There's no need. Zheluofeng waved his sleeve, his expression hard and cold. Given the state of the Whitestone Corps, it doesn't matter if we send any troops. The method employed by the Tibetans is the best one. This method will actually result in the smallest number of casualties. Otherwise, the Whitestone Corps might truly be wiped out. Ah! The general's jaws dropped, all of them dumbstruck. His Majesty is correct. Right now, this is truly the best method. A cold and indifferent voice came from behind. This voice silenced all the generals. If even the great general approved of Zheluofeng's words, then it truly was the case. Zheluofeng is truly an excellent partner. On the other side, Daluan Ruozhen nodded and smiled upon seeing the Mengshi Zhao generals so quickly pacified. Zheluofeng had a burning ambition, and he also had the insight necessary to carry out such ambition, the ability to see the essence of the problem at a glance. There were many things that didn't even need to be explained to him. As a partner and ally, Zheluofeng truly was quite suitable. Get ready. We're done probing. It's time for the real battle to begin, Daluan Ruozhen said as he slowly turned to Huashu Huaitsong. The righteous do not grasp for profit, and the kind do not command soldiers. A general required a callous heart and a prioritization of the overall situation. Although the battle on the summit had seemed extremely fierce, this was barely the beginning for people like Daluan Ruozhen and Huashu Huaitsong. All of this was merely the prelude. With these words, Daluan Ruozhen quickly turned around and began to walk toward the rear. The moment he turned around, Behind him, a resounding voice came from the distant summit. "Get ready! Fire!" Daluan Ruozan quickly turned back around, just in time to see a volley of arrows descend like locusts over the earth. This time, however, this dense volley of arrows was not fired from the Tibetan army, but from the Annan Protectorate army. "Aya!" Screams filled the air as a great number of Mengshi Zhao and Yusang soldiers at the base of the mountain were felled. Daluan Ruozan froze for a moment, and then he raised his head to glance at that thin figure on the summit, a hint of surprise in his eyes. But he quickly smiled and vanished into the army with a wave of his sleeve. "Congratulations to user for killing 6,780 Tibetans. Congratulations to user for killing 49,861 Mengshi Zhao soldiers." At the summit, a string of messages rang out in Wang Chong's mind. As he gazed down at the minor turmoil within the Mengshi Yusang army, a faint smile crept onto his lips. He had killed more than 50,000 Mengshi Zhao and Yusang soldiers in this battle. He had killed Jiasiluo and killed almost half of the Mengshi Zhao Whitestone Corps. If it wasn't for the fact that a significant portion of the Whitestone Corps hadn't managed to charge very far up the mountain, the casualties would have been even greater.